First race, and now we are here to start the season in Europe, and yeah, look forward to the sprint again.
You have already started on Sunday with the Portuguese Classic. What happened to you there?
Well, the parcours was a bit too hard, but Casper Pedersen won, so we had a success. So yeah, it's nice to start the season with a win in a one-day race like that, and now we are here in the Algarve to do a good race again.
And today, you know it really well. You know it really well at this stage. What's special about that sprint of today?
I won here before. It's a hard final, but I think it fits what I can do quite well. So that's why I've won here before, and yeah, I want to try it again today.
Okay, much. Best of luck. Success.
He's won here before, he wants to try again. He has the strongest team here, he has the strongest lead out here. He is the big favourite, isn't he?
Yeah, he has to be. He's had that win. He's had, well, 3 times inside the top 4, so he's had a 4th, a 2nd and a 1st, and he didn't finish his last race, so it's a pretty decent start. But I think it's fair to say, when we step back and look at the wider sprint scene, there's been although we're only halfway through February, but we've already had quite a lot of races, but sometimes we see a particular sprinter emerge who's very dominant. Right now we haven't really seen that. We've seen the sprinting wins spread across quite a few riders, but it's so important for these sprinters to get a win on the board early. As we know, they're paid to win bike races, but to get a win early is really good for the morale, because also you trust your teammates as well, and if it takes a while, especially if you're in a new team, to get your sprint train dialed, that can take a little bit of finessing. It's very nuanced, but for Jakobsen, look at who he's got around him. It is a proper A-team from Soudal Quickstep. It really is. Michael Morkov, there's not a better lead-out rider in the world. I think it's fair to say he is so invaluable. And a good little nod there as well. Fabio Jakobsen talking about Casper Pedersen. He's very quick, the young Dane, from a smaller group, or from a group that's stripped of its big sprinters. He is very, very dangerous. So they've got a really versatile team, but it's a proper A-team they have here.
They're also set up for the general classification as well, with Ilan van Wilder. Supported Remco Evenepoel last year, didn't he, to the Vuelta a España, but he's a man who came across looking for his own ambitions first of all as well, and he'll have the team to support him. Can climb, can do just about everything. And keep your eye on Ilan van Wilder this week, the young Belgian.
A couple of teams there, the El Fapel cycling team. Remember, in 5.2k's time, no more bidons, so just making sure they get the bidons and the fueling. But with this headwind finish, there's no real panic here. You often see these riders nearer the front of the bunch, but with that head crosswind, it does tend to neutralise things. So, although you could say, why are they at the back? Well, actually, it's relatively safe in a crosshead when it neutralises things just a little bit. So, but there he is, having a conversation with the aforementioned Michael Morkov, maybe discussing perhaps what's to come, talking a little bit about the wind. They'd have had a meeting about that. I'd imagine they'd have been updated as well on what the weather conditions are. But importantly, he knows exactly how to finish this race off.
Just under 25 kilometres to go. Strong out here, and the gap has gone to below a minute for the first time since the breakaway went earlier on today, in fact. Of course, we're looking at Jakobsen, Meus. Don't forget about Pinwet or Stewart for Groupama. They, by the way, are minus Amondemar. I'm afraid he has COVID, so get well soon, Arnaud. Hugo Hofstetter, I think Matt's mentioned already. Keep your eyes on Casper van Uden of Team DSM. John Dinkelb's here as well.
Yeah, we didn't mention John, did we? Yeah, looking at their lineup, you'd imagine he would be their protected rider. And also, talking about young contenders for the overall, you mentioned Ilan van Wilder, the young Belgian for Soudal. What about Oscar Onley? It's still only 20 years of age. Had a standout year last year. Well, he was riding at Continental.
Oh, sorry, Matt.
There's been a prank.
And there's a rider down. It looks like it's one of the riders from the AP Hotels team. Tavira is the club. They've been around for quite a while. Now, how did it happen? Your eye on this.
quite near the well.
I'm amazed that only one rider's gone down there, Matt.
I was just about, you took the words right out of my mouth. There it is again. To see that, the way that fan effect, that the way that these riders are able to innately react to a situation like that. Sometimes it is catastrophic and we see riders all over the road. Other occasions, it does beg a belief. They're moving at around 45, 50 k's an hour there. Just a few centimetres quite often from the wheels in front, behind. But yeah, thankfully only one rider came down. But no, it's talking about Oscar Onley, who's got an amazingly long contract. He was signed the back end of last year for the World Tour team DSM. He signed all the way through to 2027. That just shows, we know that we're in the era of long contracts for younger riders, but that is something to keep your eye on, because he was so impressive at the back end of last year. Didn't get that win, but boy did he come close, and such a good climber. So watch out for him for the overall. Not so much today, but watch him later in the race.
Look out for Jai Hindley as well.
Oh yeah.
Giro d'Italia winner. There he is, wearing number 13. We expect him this year to go to the Tour de France. It's a route that suits him much more than a possible Giro defence would. And there's Filippo Ganna. Probably going back to the Giro d'Italia this year. You're watching the opening stage of the Volta Algarve, and we're into the final 23 kilometres now. Lots of cycling live and on demand this week across Warner Brothers Discovery Sports, Eurosport, and of course GCN Plus. And exclusive to GCN Plus is the world of cycling. It's back for a brand new series, and the 2023 opening episode has only just come out. So make sure you log in and give it a watch. If you aren't already a subscriber, make sure you subscribe, because they'll be talking to the likes of Tom Southam and Ian Field in the studio. And contributions coming up this week from Gilbert, Valgren, Campenaerts and Sagan. The topic of this week's show is an important one in professional cycling. Not necessarily a happy one, but is pro cycling more dangerous than ever? You can join Dan Lloyd for all the very latest each and every week. Si Richardson will be along as well. Plenty of contributions. Killian is back too with his stat attacks. The world of cycling returning on GCN Plus for 2023. Here in the Algarve, as I said, into the final 23 Ks. It's all looking pretty good for those who want to sprint right now. We're on our final climb of the day. It's an uncategorised climb. Tops out in a couple of Ks time, and it's the two sprinters teams who are just controlling the pace. They're keeping the breakaway where they want them, and they're trying to make sure that they catch them at the right time without putting their own sprinters in trouble. We've already heard from Jakobsen. Let's hear from Jordi Meus now of Bora Hansgrohe.
And today should be a sprint. What's the plan, really, knowing that in your team you have also some strong GC contender? How you will manage all of that?
Yeah, I think today is really important to race as a unit, especially with this wind. We expect some action in crosswinds. We hope to be up there with as many teammates as possible.
And how do you manage a sprint?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to pass the finish line at first. Every sprint is different. I think for sure Jakobsen is a really big man to beat and a top favorite, but we'll try everything to be close around him when the sprint starts, and hopefully I can pass him.
So the best ideally would be to take his wheel, or to try something on your own with your own lead out?
We have some strong guys, but I think if you look to Quick Step, they are really here with their lead-out train. We are more of a mixture of strong guys who will ride the classics. So yeah, we hope to have our own team in order, but if not, I'm sure they can bring me really good to the Quick Step train.
Thank you, man. Best of luck. Yes.
Second on the opening day in the warm-up race for the Tour Down Under, what's known nowadays as the Schwalbe Classic. Didn't have a good Tour Down Under, wasn't able to start on stage 2, was he, after the opener? But then he's come back to Europe. He raced in Spain, in southern Spain, down in Andalusia last week, and Murcia. He was third in Almeria, third in the Vuelta Ciclista a la Región de Murcia, Costa Cálida as they call it now, Tour of Murcia to you and I. 2 podium places, but again I think he was realistic there. He knows what he's up against and who he's up against particular today.
Yeah, and he referenced the amazing lead-out train that Soudal Quickstep have here. Asgreen, Cavagna, de Klerk, well, not so much lead-out, and Morkov, even Pedersen's going to be part of that. So Jakobsen has a full-strength lead-out team. But actually, Bora don't have a bad one at all. You've got Mayos the sprint, but when you look at the likes of Niels Pollitt and Marco Haller, just as 2 key riders, and Jonas Koch is doing some work at the moment. That Pollitt and Haller in the final, they're riders that can ride in the wind really well. So you'd imagine it would be Pollitt that goes first, and then Mayos will be dropped off finally by Marco Haller, who had a great year last year, didn't he? Actually took some wins himself, first wins in a long time. So Haller, a rider who's in his early 30s now, who I think is just getting better and better, performed well in the Classic. So Jordi Mayos himself, I think, has 2 key riders for the lead out, the 2 riders I just mentioned. So he hasn't got a bad lead out, but yeah, Quickstep have arguably the top one here.
They've been contributing for a while with Frederik Vandal. Tim de Klerk has been working really hard, hasn't he, for Soudal Quickstep. Then again, we could record that phrase and replay it throughout the season, couldn't we?
Yeah, just drop it in any time he races. He's so willing and eager, though, isn't he? Actually, Remy Cavagna, well, I thought Remy was going to just go through there, but not yet. They've got this well in control. There's no point in using any resources until you really need to, because we've seen Tim de Klerk do this time after time for kilometre after kilometre, and he's doing it, well, not exactly single-handedly. He's got one other rider there with him, but no, doing such a good job. It means what they have for the final, when they really do need to pick up the pace and defend that position at the front. And we know in a crosswind, a head crosswind, it is far more complex. In a tailwind, or when they've got benign conditions, you can dictate the pace at the front. But because it's so easier on the wheel, it's easier for other teams to move up at a certain point. So the longer you can leave it to deploy your resources, the more effective you're going to be in the closing stages. So no point in using anybody yet, only use Cavagna maybe in the last 4K.
It's down to half a minute now. Groupama FDG in their new jerseys that are almost imitation Alpecin-de-Koning, can't they? Just moving up. Blue is the colour this year.
Yeah, it's a very blue year.
A glimpse of Edward Turns of Trek Segafredo from the air. Alongside him, Sandro Meurisser of Alpecin-de-Koning. Interesting that it's the first race that they seem to be going for general classification with Quinten Hermans, just come off his cross season. Remember, he was on the podium, wasn't he, of Liège-Bastogne-Liège last year. He was up there as well in the lead-up classics with the very best in the world. And he says that's his aim for the first part of the year. He wants to be with the likes of Pogacar and Alaphilippe when it comes to that Ardennes week.
Yep, it was quite interesting politically, wasn't it, when he rode. It was with Intermarché when he got that second place. Up to that point, the best ride of his whole career, the second place in Liège. And then he just got better and better. But he was snubbed, wasn't he, for the Tour de France? Because I believe that an arrangement had been made that it was already going to move to Alpecin. And from time to time, we see teams do that, making sure they're the ones in control. So clearly he felt quite affronted by that, one of their standout riders of the first part of last year. But no, he comes here wearing number 1. We'll be interested to see how Hermans gets on after that cross season. And also, look, watch out as well for Nicola Conci as well, the Italian, wearing number 5 for Alpecin-de-Koning. Another good rider who can finish well, that's pretty decent on the climbs. So those are the 2 riders, but yeah, you'd imagine it would be Hermans for the overall here, because although we've got mountains, they're not super high mountains. They're climbs that open it up to the slightly lighter puncheurs as well. And one rider, I don't know whether you agree or not, given the way that he climbed in Argentina, and given the way that he's ridden in the past, what do you reckon of the chances of Filippo Ganna with that TT at the end? Do you know, because he can survive so well and only lose a limited amount of time on these climbs. I'm fascinated to see what the plan of Ineos is.
Matt, you're the expert here, you're the ex-pro rider, but I'll tell you one thing. Never in my life have I gone for a general classification race and highlighted Filippo Ganna's name.
I've done the same.
Today.
I've got Arrangement, Ganna, Martinez and Pidcock. But I think everybody else would have done so. I nearly ran out of yellow on my pen for Ineos Grenadiers. Yeah, they've got a great team here, and that's not taking anything away from Kwiatkowski, Di Plus or Castroviejo. But we know, you'd imagine, given the composition of the team and how they've been riding so far this year, they'd be the workhorses perhaps.
Watch Kwiato win the GC again now.
Probably, yeah, just get the hat trick to prove me wrong. Yeah. I'll have to message Steve Cummings, who's in the car for them, to see if I can get the inside scoop on what their tactics are. But also, they've got quite a lot of freedom on the road. I mean, they'll have a plan, but also it just depends this early in the year how people's legs are. And those plans change fluidly out on the road, don't they? But what is clear, without dwelling on them for too long, is that they have a wealth of riches and they have options. But I think importantly, they want to win stages as well. It's not just coming here and trying to dominate, go for the overall. I think they just want to win bike races as they look to the future to try and ultimately, form a plan, form a team that can ultimately win the Tour de France again. That's their plan. They've been disappointing in the Tour. They know that. They're racing in a different way, but ultimately they want to get back to winning the Tour, and these races are the start of that coming together. But yeah, lots of options, lots of exciting riders in this squad.
Talking of changing places and changing plans for Ineos Grenadiers, they've already had to change them because Geraint Thomas was due to come here, a former two-time winner, but he's been unwell, so he stayed training in the United States, and he is expected to make his first European race at the Tirreno Adriatico, we're told. There we go. They must be listening to you, Matt. There it is, Filippo Ganna wearing number 44. He's just come off the track. He was at the Euros last week in Switzerland. And as we're over the final of the uncategorised climbs as well today, it's now all descent or flat towards the finish. The sprinters seem to have survived, Matt. I think we can make that call now.
Yep, I mean it was a fair old drag, but it was a drag. We don't have any stats in terms of the gradient, but just looking at the shape of the bunch and looking at the fact there was still that long line at the front, it wasn't far removed from just riding on the flat, so it looks like it was only 3 or 4% of drag. Nothing that any of these sprinters would be too worried about, especially given that nagging wind where it's so much easier to sit in the wheels as well. But 26 seconds now, 17 Ks to go. And a lot of this downhill, so we've got a drop off the top, so this is going to be a pretty fast run into the line. I'd imagine it's going to be under 20 minutes now until we hit the finish.
Looking around there from camp, he knows what's coming. Grigorev doing the same, and look at the pace here. Perfect roads for picking up the speed on. New tarmac, not too many big corners. You can lean into these, Matt. You'd love this.
Oh, it's great. Dry road, especially the start of the season as well. Many riders, as you said, Rob, making their debut in this race. The dampness has gone away. It's still very overcast, but there's nothing like carving your way down a well-engineered road at speed early part of the season. Obviously, all these teams have been at training camps. They're well used to their equipment, but it's a different feeling when you're in a race. It's quite liberating, actually, and one of the most exciting elements of being a pro rider for me was just without a care in the world, almost just descending without really thinking about anything at all, just the feeling of you and the bike. It's beautiful.
Bora Hansgrohe trying to challenge Soudal Quickstep. Jordi Mills tried to take it to Fabio Jakobsen. Jakobsen, who won 2 stages last year, both sprints, down in Lagos, just as he had done a couple of years previous, and over in the capital in Faro. And then Remco Evenepoel, he won one of the stages, and with that took the overall general classification. So 3 stages in the GC last year for what was De Koning Quickstep, what is now Soudal Quickstep. Oh, sorry, what was Quickstep Alpha Final. So what you mean now about them changing every 2 minutes?
Yeah.
But anyway, we know who we're talking about.
We do.
So if they get anything near that this year, it will be another extremely successful Tour of the Algarve for Soudal Quickstep. First, they've got to catch the breakaway, but that seems in hand at the minute. It's in 25 seconds now. 15 kilometres remaining on the first opening stage of the Volta Algarve. Portimao to Lagos today, 200 kilometres. First 200 of a 792-kilometre race over the next 5 days. 2 uphill finishes, the typical traditional ones in Foya tomorrow, Mayao on Saturday, and then the finale, the time trial, around Lagoa. 25 kilometres comes on Sunday, which means that as well as today with sprinters having their opportunities, on those 2 uphill finish you might find the likes of Ganna, Kung, Bissiger, other strong time trialists trying to hold on, Tobias Foss, and then trying to do something when it comes to the final stage. There's a real open look at how it might be won this year. It's an opportunity for many riders to take an early season victory, but of course to do that they have to have the form, they have to have the legs, they have to have that killer instinct.
Yeah, you're quite right. We've got some real time trialling talent here, haven't we? The last world time trial champions over the last few years are here, but as you say, some great talent. European champion, world champion, former world champion. That's to come on the final day, but yeah, we'll find out a lot tomorrow, because tomorrow is a very different stage to this one, isn't it? We have the hardest, one of the hardest climbs of the race, the Alto de Foya, first category climb. But again, it's a fast climb. It's not super steep. It's a quick one, isn't it? We've seen groups of 30 come to the finish, and then riders clip off near the end. Dan Martin in the past, Evenepoel, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it always reminds me of the climbing version of a sprinter stage. You get these riders peeling off every few kilometres, and I know we see it on the longer climbs in the Grand Tour at a sort of different speed, but the way we will see it tomorrow, if it's raced as it's usually raced, it will look like a sprint stage. It will be absolutely rapid. They'll be riding 20 kilometres per hour plus up this climb, and it will be maybe a small group at the end. Of course, we had all the fun and games with Igita and company, didn't we, with the crash, I think it was, the last time we were up there as well. Let's see what happens today in this finale first, but plenty to think about going into Foya tomorrow, and then Mayao with its loops and laps coming up on Saturday. Foya in this region, this west region of the Algarve, and Mayao over to the east of the capital, and we'll have the grand finale in the southern central part of this region, which is of course right in the south of Portugal. So 14 seconds now, 13Ks to go. It isn't happening for the break today, Matt. They're going to be brought back.
Yep, 13 seconds. There's just too much firepower, and still we've got just 2 riders on the front, one from Bora and the ever-present representative from Soudal Quickstep, Tim de Klerk, still driving hard. No other teams have assisted as well, because they're doing so well, and also no other teams are assisting. Why use our resource when the 2 best sprinters in the race have their teams on the front? Everybody else can sit back. They'll know what that run into the finish line is like, and it's probably worth, because we'll be there in very short order, Rob, it's probably worth having a quick gander, isn't it, at the last couple of Ks. These riders will know it before, but if you're casting your eyes over this for the very first time, 2 Ks to go, gentle meandering right and left, and then just before the Flamme Rouge there's a big sweeping roundabout. They go the right hand side around that roundabout under the Flamme Rouge. Then with about 750 metres to go, they got another roundabout, then it's a straight run into the line, but the wind is coming from the left-hand side and into the nose, so it should be a late one, as Rob, our break finally are taken back.
In the orange, it's Alexander Grigorev. In the Danish national jersey, Alexander Kamp. The last 2 riders of a 5-man group who were out there to be caught. Also in today's break was Sergio Garcia, Antonio Ferreira and Rafael Lorenzo, who was the first to be caught. A couple of Portuguese riders in there, a Spaniard, a Russian and a Dane, but it's compact, as the graphics tell us, all back together. Left-hand side, as we look at it, the blue and white of Soudal Quickstep. Through the centre, you've got the Intermarché jerseys moving up. Can they turn back the clock for the former Tour de France opening stage winner Mike Turner, sir? Or is it for Madis Mikkels of Estonia today? He's a fast finisher as well. Well, only time will tell. As, thankfully, we're past that wood truck. I know it's cold and they'll need it round here, but wasn't the moment to be driving up there delivering the wood today. There's Bora Hansgrohe on the right-hand side in the green. They're backing Jordi Meus today. And through the centre, it's a reduced team for Jumbo-Visma, probably concentrating a little more on what we'll see in the general classification, but we know that Tim van Dijk is a good classics rider. And young Owen Geleen, he's come from the development squad.
Yeah.
And he is said to have a fast-ish finish, so we'll see how he goes. No huge results in the under-23s yet, nothing to look at and say, well, he's definitely going to do this or that, but remember that not everybody develops at the same rate. We're approaching the final 10 kilometres of the opening day in the Algarve. It's down to the sprinters. The break has been caught and we're on our way to Lagos, scene of many a sprint battle before. The usual run in here after a slight change in the last 20 kilometres. We had one final climb, but it wasn't enough to see the sprinters ditched. And this is where we'll come into the final straight. There's that roundabout and then it's this left-hand lane. Don't look over to the right there. They will stay in this left-hand lane. And it will be a finish along the seafront. A sprint that's on a fairly narrow road. 2 roundabouts inside the last kilometre and a quarter. The final roundabout taking them onto the seafront. And Matt, the wind is up.
Yep, it's blowing really strong. And also, a big nod to the production team for giving us an aerial fly-through there. We often get the graphs, but that was a really nice touch, getting the drone up in these windy conditions to give everybody that. We can describe it as best we can. We've obviously got Google Street View to look at. The riders know this finish well. That's a nice little touch, actually. We've got a real sense of it. But that's a Portuguese flag blowing in the breeze there, just showing you how strong this wind is. So coming from the left-hand side, in the nose, the sprinters teams will be riding on the right-hand side of that left-hand lane to force anybody who wants to try and come around with them into the wind. So watch out for that as we're coming to that final roundabout.
And just before those final couple of kilometres, there's that ever so slight uphill road. It's not really a climb, but it's false flat uphill for around a kilometre till we get 2Ks to go. And I know that in the past is where teams have just tried to put pressure on sprinters who might be feeling it a little bit. Doesn't usually work in terms of dropping people, but we have seen some excellent work. And I can remember last year, off the top of my head, Remco Evenepoel pulling a huge turn.
I remember it.
I wasn't commentating at the time. I usually cover this race, but I was away covering the Olympic Games last year, the Winter Olympics, and I remember in a jet-lag state switching on and wondering if I was hallucinating, because he was ridiculously good.
Here we go. It's a crash, unfortunately.
Now then. That's not good for the rider from Tudor. And I'm afraid that rider is Joel Suter, a really good Swiss rider. He's down. Oh, we don't need to see any more of that, I'm afraid. All the best to Joel Suter there, because that looks like a shocker. Also down there is a number 127, who's Yesid Bira. Several riders here from the smaller Portuguese teams, and this is how it happened.
Yes, Suter's gone over that wall, isn't he? Very, very unfortunate there. Touch of wheels. Let's hope he's okay. He's got medical attention quickly, which is good to see.
Well, thankfully the doctors are on the scene. A reminder that we don't bring these images to you. They're coming from the production on site. We don't get to choose which images we show, I'm afraid, but that's not good for Joel Suter. And I have a feeling that several riders may have to leave the race here. A couple of riders down there from one of the local teams, which is AP Hotels, and I mean local because they're from the Algarve, not just from Portugal. Farense and Tavira. All the best to those watching, and well, that puts a bit of a sickener on it, doesn't it, before we get to the finish, I'm afraid.
It does. It brings home how precarious quite often this sport is, and we've seen several crashes already this year. What we can do about that, Rob, it remains to be seen, but interesting to see the world of cycling, how that's discussed and dissected. But anyway, let's just hope that the runs we saw on the deck there aren't too bad, and we'll recover. But yeah, it is unfortunately, whatever way we slice it, is a component part of our sport. It's just, and also the riders accept they need to take some sort of responsibility in it as well. It's a very, very difficult conversation. It certainly is. Well, just great to see Suter's up and standing. Thank goodness for that. Much better news with Suter up. Whether he continues or not is another matter, but he's up and he's on his feet. That is much better news. Rider down there for FAPL is the rider who's actually in the breakaway, Grigorev. Very unfortunate. Head shake
And you wonder as well whether he will continue or not. So 6.7 kilometres to go, and as Matt was just reminding us there, make sure you tune into the world of cycling, because they'll be discussing with guests in the studio and from around professional cycling as to whether this sport has become too dangerous at the top level or not. And that is exclusive to GCN Plus subscribers. First in a brand new series of the world of cycling. We're on our way to Lagos then. And there'll be a few nerves around the bunch after that. I mean, what is generally the reaction in the group? Is it sort of, we've got to get on with it and forget about it? Or do you generally see a few looks here and there? Oh, hang on, guys, we've got to concentrate.
It's a little bit of both. Quite often, it might take a little while for that information to come over the radio, because that happened quite near the back. So riders at the front might not even be aware, but quite often you can hear it. It's just that horrible sound of carbon and tarmac and the shouts of riders coming down. You just never look round. You hear it, you almost tighten up on the bike, and then you just carry on. It's or you pick your way through the crash if you're behind it. But it's very unpleasant, and I don't think you can ever get used to it, because each one is unique. It's massively unpleasant, but you just have to get on with it. And unfortunately, and I hope I don't feel like I'm repeating myself here, but it's a part of road cycling. These are on open roads, and that incident there didn't look like there was anything particularly wrong with the road. It's just a touch of wheels on that occasion.
Yeah. It's Jimmy Johnson's time at the front with 5 kilometres to go. He's there racing for Alpecin-de-Koning. Trek Segafredo with Jacopo Mosca doing his turn at the front in the white and red. You can see Rémi Cavagna having taken over now from the main man, the tractor. Soudal Quickstep have been riding all day, as you'd expect, as they have the big name sprinter in Fabio Jakobsen. Of course, Tim de Klerk having done his job. It's also a very good afternoon. Hello, welcome to racing with a big contender for Uno X. We didn't see him involved too much in the Tour of Valencia, just getting the motor going ever so slowly. Ready for the classics is the wily old fox Alexander Kristoff. Can he find that speed again to the line today?
Yeah, just off the podium in Almeria, wasn't he? I think he was 4th in Almeria, so it's obviously going well. Not bad for one of his first races. And the way that we heard Søren Verenskjold talking suggested quite strongly they were going to ride for Kristoff today. Maybe flip it round for stage 3, take it in a little bit, take it in turns. But they're riding on the front now, really high intensity. It is Sparagli sat in second wheel there, so it suggests that they are. Given the fact that Sparagli was in second wheels, it suggests they're going to be sprinting for somebody else today, not the Italian, but. Given we've got this wind, only 3.9 k's to go, this looks relatively easy in the bunch. In the wheels it is, but when you're riding on the front, it's so much harder. So riders are going to be riding at a higher intensity for shorter amounts of time in this wind. It's because it's so much easier behind. Only one intense turn, and that's what makes that turn that we were just briefly talking about of Evenepoel last year utterly incredible. He did the best part of 2k on the front, and he's one of the only riders in the peloton to do that, given his engine and given the fact that he's ridiculously aerodynamic as well. So he is a unique specimen. Not many riders, actually hardly any, Rob, can do the sort of effort that he did last year.
Yeah, for Alpecin-de-Koning, maybe look towards Timo Kielich, a young Belgian rider from St. Truiden, wearing number 7 on his back. Certainly we've seen now that Christian Sbaragli has not won for 7.5 years, and well, with the work he was doing there, it would suggest he wasn't going to be trying winning today. We're going on this ever so slight uphill drag now, well known to followers of the Volta Algarve. There you can see it, 3 kilometres to go, and when we get to 2k's to go, the little drag finishes and those roundabouts and the run into town proper begins. 3k's remaining now, and that'll be good news for those who want to go for the general classification, given the little spill that we just saw a moment ago.
Yeah, another rider we haven't mentioned actually, I have underlined in green, Matteo Trentin as well for UAE Team Emirates. We'll probably want to get in the mix, I'd imagine. Not a pure sprinter, but we know he's pretty fast. He's had a couple of top 10s already this year, but out of the squad of UAE Team Emirates, he would be the rider that might go for it, or they might not have a full lead out. But it's still on the front of the right hand side there, Rob, Soudal Quickstep, and on the left hand side, Bora. And then the blue, interestingly now moving through to the front, no doubt looking after Jake Stewart. You'd imagine Groupama FDJ in the navy blue kit there, just in the middle of your screen.
Hofstetter being moved up as well in the red jersey for RKS Samsic, but it doesn't have too many men around him. Here we go on this uphill drag. We're about to come over the top of it now. Christoph is staying up towards the front where he needs to be. We're just seeing Sudal, quick step on the left-hand side. I was going to say Evenepoel then, he's not in this race, but Jakobsen, pardon me, is there. Jakobsen is there alongside Van Wilder. Jakobsen, the European champion, just moving up for himself through the centre. I'm sure he'll be trying to re-fight his lead out in a moment's time. Bora Hansgrohe desperately trying to put the power and the pace on. It's Marco Haller who's been doing that for them. 2 kilometres to go now. X just making sure that they have Alexander Kristoff at the front. It did go uphill, and there was a concerted effort there from Bora Hansgrohe to really try and put the likes of Jakobsen in a little bit of pressure. They haven't got rid of Jakobsen, but what they've done is just move him down into about 30th or 40th place there. He's got to move up again, and they're hoping, I guess, that that little bit of effort to move up, find his team again, is going to take a little bit of the spring out of his step.
Yeah, well, they've placed one of the riders in the front. You can't quite tell who it is at the moment, but they're looking round. Also, UAE Team Emirates on the left-hand side as well. So it is Sudal Quickstep on the front, coming into this first little right-hander, trying to spot where the European champion is. Several riders from UAE, they're very well placed at the front. X also there. So not a lot of colour blocking, just showed how hard that final climb was.
Coming around, they will twist right in just a moment's time into that final few hundred metres. 1 kilometre to go here. A look round from Remy Cavagna, and he can see that Fabio Jakobsen is being brought up on the left as we look at it by Miguel Marco. He'd been down into about 15th position, but through the centre it's UAE Emirates as we come towards this final roundabout now, and then they'll be into the big finale. Matt, it is key to wait here in this wind.
It is. It's Groupama FDJ on the front, 750 metres to go. Lots of glancing around. And Jakobsen is way back, but he can afford to leave it. He's still got his lead-out man on his wheel. So Jakobsen, the European champion, is on the wheel of Michael Morkov at the moment, as it still is. It is the blue of Groupama FDJ. There's also a couple of riders in the mix there from X.
And you can see that Stewart's there, Penwet is there as well, moving up is Trentin, left-hand side as we look at it. It's now Mirko who's charged with trying to wait before he leaves. Well, that's 300 metres to go now, into 200 metres to go, and it's Mirko who's still putting his man into position at the right time. It's a late one, this, and now they go into the wind. On the left-hand side in the white, you can see Jakobsen is there, but is he going to get around the main man? I'm not sure he is, because going to the line right now, it's Jumbo-Visma, look like they're going to take it. No, it's Christoph. Christoph is there. Christoph through the centre, and we wondered when the wily old fox would get that motor up to speed, and it's right here, right now in the Algarve.
What a sprint that was from Alexander Kristoff through the centre. He had another one, I think it was Verenskov sprinting on the left-hand side as well. I think Jakobsen had to, it was a very late sprint, but Alexander Kristoff powered through the centre, but it wasn't actually given a lead out. It looked as if they were going for a two-pronged assault on the win, and might have got first and second or first and third, but great win there. First win of the year, first win in his brand new team colours. That was absolutely superb, and I must admit, a slight surprise, but that was, we know he likes a hard drag of a finish, but magnificent there from Alexander Kristoff.
Well, there is the view. Alexander Kristoff off to celebrate. Gets the congratulation from those looking for him. And Kristoff opens his account. By the way, there's a crash in there for Casper van Uden, the sprinter from DSM. We just saw him back on his bike and going towards the finish. And as the wind batters the finish line, it's Alexander Kristoff who wins just ahead of Jordi Meus, and this is that sprint again. Let's have a look. Søren Varensholt is in front of Kristoff here. You can see that Jakobsen is being brought up on the right hand side at the bottom of your screen in the white jersey by Mirko. Groupama having a real go, it looks like, for Paul Penwet here, who is wearing number 32. Now on the left hand side you have the sprint being launched by the rider from Alpecin de Koning. That is young Timo Kielich, who we said it might be. Meus goes in the green. There's a rider too from Jumbo-Visma. But through the centre, it's Alexander Kristoff who launches ahead of Jordi Meus And well, it's a third in the end for Søren Varenshaw.
Yep, that was my error there. Varenshaw was leading him out, protecting him from the wind on the right-hand side. So he was. So there's that just crash that we didn't see that before. A couple of riders coming down on the right, but this is the sprint. This is where Varenshaw goes. But look at him moving over to the right-hand side. And Christoph waiting. Already on the left-hand side, Jakobsen is exposed, but then straight through the centre. Christoph looking very, very strong indeed. Took it by half a length in the end.
All right, there's some Jumbo-Visma in there as well. We assume that one of them would have been Owen Helena, maybe Tim van Dijken as well. There were two riders actually in there. Bit of a messy finish. I think that Tom Pidcock was there or thereabouts. Yep, there he is, just on the right-hand side, following the wheel of Jordi Meus. And I think he's brought home a top 10 as well.
Just likes getting stuck in, doesn't he, Pidcock? He's so versatile. But this is a classic sprint. They did so well there. As you say, first and third. You wonder if Jakobsen just opened up a little bit too early, but he stuck with Morkov on the right-hand side there. But then look at that. So Jakobsen faded. As soon as he knew he wasn't going to win, he just dropped off a little bit there. He's not going to fight. As soon as he knows he's lost, he's not going to keep on going. But great win by Alexander Kristoff. Very important win as well. A perfect sprint. The timing, absolutely fantastic. And he just came off the wheel of his teammate with that wind. I mean, when you look at the point that Kristoff launched his sprint, he was still protected by his teammate. That's so crucial in a win like this. So had that protection all the way. The other riders that had launched were already in the wind. We saw Jakobsen on the right-hand side having to contest with that wind. While at the same time, Kristoff had launched his sprint but was still sheltered, so could carry that little bit of extra pace.
Or liking it in Lagos was Alexander Kristoff. UNOX taking their second victory of the season. And the man who took their first, setting up the big new signing to do it on European soil. And this is that final kilometre again.
Yeah, it is quite... It's the only team with any real on the right-hand side. That climb, it did cause a little bit of an upset. Several riders slipping back. Not much collar blocking at all here. And you can just see, as you said, Remy Cavagna having a little look round, see if you can find where Jakobsen is. Now, Jakobsen at the moment is way back, but he's not in a bad position at all. And obviously, he trusts Michael Morkov to pick his way through. So they're waiting. Farmer bossed it through that corner, usurping at the time UAE Team Emirates, who were looking after Matteo Trentin. And as I said, they're going to move over to the left-hand side. Still lots of looking round. A very late bit of walking across the road there from a random pedestrian as well. Slightly worrying. But they're opening. This is Miles Scottson on the front now. Scottson taking it through very early. Well, sorry, this is Scottson on the left-hand side here, should I say. But look at where the men from Uno X are. You can just see Werenskjold there. Big figure of Werenskjold still looking after Kristoff. He makes his move and straight away starts to drift over to the left-hand side where that shelter is. Great bit of riding here. They really did do their homework. Straight over to the left-hand side. And Kristoff still in the wheel now. Still in the wheel, off the wheel with only about 80 metres to go. So it's minimum amount of time exposed in that wind.
The experience, the know-how, and the speed to back it up. Alexander Kristoff is the oldest stage winner at the Volta Algarve for 38 years. Not since then 41-year-old Joaquim Agostinho won in 1984 has anybody won at such a late stage of their career. 35 years old, Alexander Kristoff with his first of the season, beating Jordi Meus and his lead-out man, Søren Varenshaw. Fourth place went to Fabo Jakobsen. Fifth, Tom Pidcock following the wheels and getting in there. Bittner, Penwet,